Miracle. Hey, what's up people, it's TTC. Just had a little delivery here from Yodel. Pretty sure this will be another 3 3/4 Star Wars figure. You will have seen in my last video that whilst I was hunting around Manchester, I managed to pick myself up a little handful of original trilogy characters, but I struggled finding a decent version of Luke, so on my way home I picked this one up off eBay. Wasn't a bad price. I think the seller originally wanted 15, but he ended up selling it for 13 in the end. Most importantly, you know, I think it's cool, so let's have a look at it. Let's get it open. I have, as always, already cut the tape just to make it easier to get into. Nobody wants to see me fannying about with that. Nice bit of TV guided packaging in there. Jeez, I didn't even know they still made that. Here he is. Let's get him out, get this box out of the way. As you can see, it is the 3 3/4 Star Wars Black Series Return of the Jedi Luke Skywalker. I only did like a quick little lazy bit of research when I was looking into which Luke to buy. I know there's a couple of vintage collection ones, but a lot of them go for a pretty high price that I'm not willing to pay. I'm not really a big fan of the Mandalorian version of him, so this seemed like the next best bet for me. Right off the bat, this is kind of weird to me. Usually a 6-inch collector, and I had loads of Black Series in this packaging. It's like a little bit of a mindfuck just looking at this. It's like someone just took one of them and just shrunk it like right down. Very confusing. It's by this point though quite nostalgic for me to see this designer box, even though I hated it at the time, but it's cool seeing it again just slightly shorter. Sort of refreshes it I suppose a little bit. There's the side of the box, just got the name, and then it's got the blurb on the back. Convinced he can turn his father away from the dark side. Blah blah blah, nobody wants to hear me reading that. This is actually how he looked in that deleted scene where he's building his own lightsaber. Didn't actually make it into the movie this look, but it's close enough to the rest of the film. If you've not seen that deleted scene, it's all over YouTube, it's pretty easy to find. It's only short, but you know, it's probably worth checking out. I find little things like that quite interesting, to be honest. Right, well, let's go on with it and crack him open. Here he is then out of packaging. I've got to say, I'm actually really quite happy with this. I wasn't sure based on images how much I was going to like it, but I actually think he looks pretty damn cool. The likeness on the face, I mean, I wouldn't say it's perfect, but I definitely actually see Mark Hamill there. Maybe a bit more of a stylized, maybe a bit of a cartoony version of him, but he's definitely there. More so than I've seen on a lot of other head sculpts at this scale anyway. The hair's also maybe a little bit longer and sculpted in this sort of dynamic, flowing sort of position, but again, it definitely is still there. I think it looks like him. He only really wore this full cloak in that deleted scene. Never really made it into the rest of the movie, so if you think this is inaccurate, then yeah, I sort of understand. But it does look cool. They've done a half decent job of it. It's not easy to do soft goods at this scale. I personally probably prefer plastic robes, but then obviously you're stuck with it on. Might have to just wet the hood and just hold it down until it dries just to help it sit a bit better. Actually, whilst we're at it, let's grab a prequel Jedi and just see if it looks better on one of them. Right, I just grabbed my Clone Wars Obi-Wan figure. This figure, by the way, I absolutely love this. It's just such a cool design for him. Let's just get it on him real quick, see how it looks. Yeah, see, same problem again, it doesn't quite sit right at this scale, but I actually think that looks a lot better on him. I much prefer it like that. I think this is going to be Obi-Wan's robe for me. Yeah, see, I'll definitely have to sort out that hood just to help it sit a bit better. I think the browns match up quite nicely too. It sits mostly alright for the rest of it, so yeah, see, I think I prefer this on Obi-Wan. I know he didn't really wear a cloak whilst he had these sort of clone gauntlet things on his arms, but you know what, who cares? It's my figure. I'll dress him how I want. Alright, here's Luke without the cloak. I actually think they've done a bang-up job of this. Obviously it's more of his look from the start of the movie, sort of in Jabba's palace, whilst he's got these kind of more Jedi sort of tunic over the top of his black jumpsuit. And yeah man, I think they captured it really well. I really like the look of this. All the material's really well done, nicely textured. Obviously you've got the sort of soft goods around the bottom of his little skirt thing. And all that's done in sort of a lighter grey just to help it stand out from the black a little bit. I don't usually bother looking at articulation, but it is actually pretty nicely done for the scale. I know there's a lot of modern vintage collection ones that are probably better done. Yeah. Oh, that was a bit of a stiff elbow. But there you go, now I've done it, it moves. Yeah, let's have another look at that head sculpt. I know I've seen some other reviews where people said it don't look anything like him at all. What are you on about, mate? Obviously everyone's got a different opinion, but I definitely see him there. He's got some decent ball joints at the hips so you can get his legs spread right out to the splits. Unfortunately, they do sort of kick out to the side instead of forward though, like how some of the older Marvel Legends used to. It's a bit of a shame, not the end of the world. See, none of it's hindered thanks to this sort of soft goods little fabric bit here. That's a nice touch. But yeah, you know, overall, I'm actually really quite happy with how this guy looks. Maybe slightly outdated by now, but I don't really care about that. As long as it looks like the guy, perfect. It's got this little belt that's done in sort of a dark brown, kind of greyish plastic. Obviously the metal studs there are just painted on in silver and on the back. And if you see, just there underneath it, there's a little tab that you just pull, just sort of unattach it. You can take it off like that. There it is, having a bit of a closer look. I quite like that though, it's a nice little accessory to have. And you can just have him with this sort of fabric belt just wrapped around his waist instead. I don't particularly think either one looks better than the other. But you know, it's nice to have the choice, isn't it? It's like an extra little accessory that's also part of the figure. You should do more little things like that. Speaking of accessories, he's obviously going to come with his little green lightsaber. I think, by the way, Luke's green lightsaber is probably my favourite lightsaber out of all Star Wars. Having a closer look at this hilt, it is nicely sculpted, but not to be a super nerd or anything, but that looks more like Obi-Wan's hilt to me. In all fairness, you know, they are extremely similar, but the grip is just slightly different. And yeah, to me, this just looks like they've painted Obi-Wan's lightsaber. Again, it's close enough, it works at a distance, so I don't really care about that. And then you've got obviously the deactivated hilt. If you look really, really closely, you can see it's been sculpted to look like it's open. You can see all the insides like he's working on it, like he is in that deleted scene. It's tiny, but it's a nice touch. If you just grab this guy again and compare the two. Yep, look, see, they are definitely different. The top one is quite a nice representation of Luke's, and the bottom one definitely looks a lot more like Obi-Wan's to me. And the final accessory is this teeny tiny, I'm going to call it a screwdriver, which is what he's using, sort of working on his lightsaber in this scene. You see him with it open and he's sort of just sat there tinkering away, doing some kind of vague, unspecified work on it. Then he closes it up, ignites it, and boom, that's the end of the really short little scene. This is absolutely tiny though. I'll be putting it straight in my accessories box so I do not lose it. Oh man, he holds the lightsaber pretty well, but his hands are pretty darn stiff here. It might just take a little bit of heat, just to maybe separate the fingers a little bit, make a bit more space. Bit easier to get him holding it in a sort of one-handed pose rather than the two. Weirdly enough, his left hand seems to work a little bit better than the right hand for some reason. But yeah, I'm sure with a little bit of heat, a bit of jigging it around, it should work a little bit better. It's not awful. And thanks to that vertical hinge in the wrist, you can get quite a nice little pointing the saber forward pose. That adds a nice little bit of extra posability. It's definitely a very cool looking figure. Even with the slightly weird hips, you can still get him standing in a kind of dynamic pose. It's not too bad. I actually think he looks good like that. It'd be nice if there was someone to store the lightsaber hilt on the belt, but obviously this isn't a version of him where he's carrying it around, this is where he's building it, so that makes more sense I suppose. So I'm straight in the accessory box for that too. Yeah, I'm definitely really happy to own this, especially with the price. There's nothing better than when the seller offers you an offer. Sometimes I feel a little bit cheeky asking for money off, so when it comes from the other end, you know, there's all the guilt alleviated from me and I get a good price. Going back to the head one last time, I bet if that had been done with the photoreal sort of face printing that they do nowadays, it'd be a totally different story. I think that'd be a sick head sculpt. Yeah, I don't know if you can see that on the bottom of his shoes there as well. They sculpted some kind of like sand and mud. It's not super well done, but it's a nice little detail. Just adds a little bit extra, doesn't it? I do have plenty of stands I can use with this guy, but as you can see, he does stand nicely on his own. Let's get a look at him with the rest of the guys. Alright, so here's the rest of the OT figures that I bought the other day. Don't know about you, but I think they all look pretty good together despite being sort of from mismatched different films and eras. They scale quite nicely together actually, that's a nice surprise. They all look pretty good height-wise, especially the difference between Luke and Vader. You know, even if I took him off the stand, Vader's got quite a bit more size in him, as he should. It's been a couple of days now since I bought these. You know, I've had a bit more chance to have a look at them, have a bit of a play around with them. And one thing I've definitely noticed is this hand is weird, man. Like, on camera here, the head sculpt actually looks pretty good through there. But this torso, he's got such like a weird, chunky torso and then tiny, skinny legs. I don't know who sculpted this. It's not unforgivably bad. And, you know, he doesn't look too bad standing there next to Luke. But I think I will probably try and replace him with a better one at some point. Just got to figure out what better ones are out there. Despite missing the front of his bowcaster, I'm actually really pleasantly surprised with this Chewbacca. But if you look really, really closely at him, he does have some kind of bluish white specks of paint all over him. Not being an expert on these, I don't know if that's actually supposed to be there, although I can't really figure out why. It's all over the back and all over the bag and everything. I don't know if the previous owner had just been like painting the wall too close and just splashed all over him. I'd be tempted to say it is some kind of paint splatter, except for the fact that it doesn't just scrape off. But it's not the end of the world. I can pretty easily remove all that with acetone if it came to it. Also looks like the bag bandolier thing has been glued on. Like there's a little blob of glue there. I don't know if it came like that originally or if the previous owner has done that too. But you know, it's probably actually better than it just flopping around all over the place. I might have a bash at cleaning him up at some point. At a distance. He does look pretty good as he is. Now the Vader definitely looks really good at first. But man, now I've spent a bit of time with it, this cape is doing my head in. I've wet it and held it down in place whilst it dries so many times. I've moved position and everything. It doesn't want to stay down like this though, it just wants to flare out like some kind of Batman cape. It's the problem with putting soft goods on a scale like this. I don't even really think they work too well on a 6-inch either. Oh, and also, these peg holes on the bottom of the feet, they are way too shallow, Hasbro. I know Only One Kenobi says it a lot on his channel, go check that out, but they just do not accommodate the peg on any stand whatsoever. Cut this peg on here a little bit smaller and it still doesn't quite fit in there. It's got just about enough in there to stop him from falling over, hold him up. But it should be better than that really, I shouldn't have to mess around with stuff. He will stand at least. And then there's Leia, and I don't know, there's not much to write home about this one. The face sculpt is nice, it's painted really nicely. Definitely see Carrie Fisher in there. This is what I was saying about Luke earlier. If his face had been done using that sort of digital face printing technology, then yeah, I think that would be really good. But if I'm not mistaken, I think he come out a few years just before they started doing that. So Leia's in a sort of off-white, chunky jumpsuit that she wears on Bespin. It sort of gives her a bit of a thin torso, big fat limbs kind of syndrome, unfortunately. It doesn't look too bad. These little white high heel boots make me laugh, they're completely out of place. I suppose it was the 80s, can't really question it now, 40 years later. Yeah, not super interesting, but at the same time, pretty nicely well done, can't complain. Like I said, I wasn't too fussy about which versions of these characters I was buying. A lot of the other ones were pretty crap. But yeah, there you go. For now, I'm happy with these lot. They're a good start to a little original trilogy They're a good start to a little OT collection. Definitely considering at some point replacing that hand. It's probably not a priority for me, but every time I see him, it sort of annoys me just a little bit. But I think for now I might focus on getting an old Obi-Wan, you know, a Ben Kenobi. I'm not sure which version. If you can think of a good one, let me know in the comments. All I can think of is the 5 POA one from The Last Jedi, which definitely looks really good, but you know, 5 POA. Then I think I'll probably look for some Stormtroopers too. I think 2 will do me to begin with. Again, I know there's lots of different versions of them. Probably some of the more modern vintage collection ones might be my best bet. But if you know anything about me, I'll probably try and find some cheaper ones too. As long as they look good and can actually hold the blasters, then yeah, I'm not too fussy. So that was a video having a look at this little Return of the Jedi Luke. What are your thoughts on it? I know there's been a lot better, more modern ones, but again, they're either super pricey or they're the crap Mandalorian versions. Don't forget to like this video, comment and subscribe. Actually gained a couple more subscribers this week, so yay! Quite happy about that. Let's keep it going up and up. I'll post some more Star Wars soon, and I'll see you guys in the next one. Cheers!